You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Betsy Blakney. Betsy is certified at the professional level with APMP, is an APMP Fellow, a past APMP International CEO, COO, Board Secretary, and Eastern Regional Representative, and a former APMP National Capital Area NCA President. With 25 years of proposal management experience, Betsy is currently Director of Proposal Operations Support for CACI. Betsy was previously the Director of Proposal Services for UNITECH, acquired now by Lockheed Martin, served in the Washington federal practice of PricewaterhouseCoopers as the Federal Proposal Manager, and began her proposal management career at Datatrac Information Services, which was acquired by CACI. An APMP member since 1996, she actively served as an APMP certification mentor, co-authored the APMP Industry Glossary of Terms, and is a frequent conference speaker and panelist. Welcome, Betsy, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Good afternoon. Good to be here.
So I'm personally very excited to have Betsy here because Betsy in a past life has been both my boss and mentor. And so I'm really excited for Betsy to be able to share with us her story and her background and so many of the things that she has passed on to me and hopefully some other things as well.
Oh, that's nice.
So Betsy, we're going to start out kind of going way back to the beginnings of where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to high school, and kind of started out your education.
Okay, that sounds good.
So where were you born?
I was born in Rochester General Hospital in Rochester, New York, which is upstate.
Oh, wow. It's very cold up there.
Especially at this time of year.
Absolutely. So did you go to high school in that area?
I did. I graduated with what was called a Regents Diploma in 1971. And then I went to receive my Bachelor of Science at Ithaca College, which is in central New York. And 75. Then I taught for 2 years, came back out and got my Master of Science at Springfield College in Massachusetts in 1979.
Okay, so you went to school, you taught. Where did you teach?
My first job was back in my hometown of Webster, New York. And then when I went to Springfield on a teaching fellowship, I taught at Western New England College as well as at Springfield College itself. I was an adjunct professor and a teaching fellow.
So you had kind of an interesting beginning, right? What kind of things did you teach early on?
Well, my first job was as a driver education instructor. I'm certified in that as well as K through 12 in physical education. Teaching and administration was my specialty at the time. And so that's how I began sort of my leadership journey.
Yeah, so it's definitely some transferable skills there. So how did you enter the proposal world then?
Well, I had accepted a position in the Reston, Virginia area, working at the national headquarters of my then professional association, and that brought me to Northern Virginia. I got the marketing bug while I was working there, and so I left that profession cold turkey And I actually entered the proposal world around 1996 when the individual who was the proposal manager at the company I work for submitted a proposal to the United States Postal Service via FedEx. And generally, when I tell this story, people understand that probably would be a career-limiting move, and it certainly was. So after the customer told us never to do that again, I was asked if I would be interested in becoming the proposal manager, since the individual who had submitted that proposal erroneously left. So it was happenstance. Some people would see that as an opportunity, and that is exactly what I did.
Wow, what a funny story, right? When we're in the rush and we don't think about it, and just submitting it with a competitor's tool.
Yeah, it wasn't funny at the time, but as we look back at it now, it always is a good story to tell.
Absolutely. So that's definitely a memorable kind of proposal that sticks out. Are there any other memorable proposals or capture efforts that you've supported?
I did, actually, for that same company. I remember we unseated an incumbent on an effort where we had very little intelligence, and the customer didn't know us. And I remember after we won the award, I got a call from the capture manager of the losing company, and he wanted to know how we could win the work at the price that we bid. And I suggested to him in a very diplomatic way that he didn't understand what his customer was willing to pay for, that he actually didn't lose on price. He just didn't understand the customer's wants and needs.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's critical, right? And sometimes we think we know our customers and we just really don't. So that's a great way to unseat an incumbent, right?
In this case, it was, yeah.
So kind of a little bit off topic, but there is so much that we all know about you because you've been in the spotlight and you've been such a prominent figure in APMP. Are there 3 things out there that not many of us might know about you?
Well, sure. In between the time I switched professions, I was trying to learn my way around the business world. So I dabbled in a lot of different things. One thing that most people don't know about me is that I actually did a stint selling cars. And that was the way that I learned the sales process. I went through formal training, and then the year that I chose to do that, we had an incredible snowstorm here in the Washington, D.C. area. I think it was around, I want to say probably around 1987 or so. The year fails me, but after I spent a week brushing off snow off of cars, I realized that there were other things that I could do with my life besides selling cars. Another thing that people wouldn't know about me, some do, but not all, that I'm an avid reader of newspapers. I generally read 2 or 3 a day. And I'm also somebody who doesn't read the comics. I head to the obituaries. I enjoy reading about other people's lives. I'm not somebody who reads fiction. Don't read a lot of novels per se, but I try to learn about how other people make a difference by reading the obituaries.
Very interesting.
And then, of course, my first career, we talked a little bit about, where I went to school and college, but my first career was as a physical education teacher and coach. I know you're into gymnastics. That was something that I coached at the high school level. And I also coached field hockey, and at the college level, I coached softball.
Wow, Betsy, you have done so much and influenced so many lives. It's amazing.
Betsy, I mean, just going back to the three things that you mentioned, Betsy, have you thought about, what would people write, in your obituary, something like that? Do you have a kind of, this is how I need to be put forward? Do you have any thoughts around it? Because it's very deep what you mentioned, because I knew someone who also do that, and they kind of live their life based on what they want other people to think of them on their deathbed kind of thing, or even post. Can you reflect a little bit more on that, Betsy?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, because that's a recommendation that my husband made, that he thought I should write my own obituary. And I know that there are people that do that. I'm not sure I'm at the stage where I want to do that, although I guess here's my third thing. I have purchased a cemetery plot. So probably a lot of people my age may not have thought about that yet, but there wasn't any more room in the family plot. So my sister and I decided that we would make sure that we at least were together. And so we went ahead and purchased a separate plot for ourselves, actually in a different cemetery than where the rest of the family is. So I don't dwell on it. And I haven't really thought about what I would say.
Yes, it's amazing, Betsy. I think that tells a lot about you. And regarding the physical education, Betsy, gymnastics is a flexible sport. Softball and hockey is different. How do you kind of train all three? And what one or two tips you could give both me and Ashley to be fit?
Well, I've always been someone who was well-rounded.
Yes.
I have a variety of skills in a lot of different areas. So I would be considered in this day and age probably a generalist.
Yes.
And of course, as time has gone on, I learned in order to excel, I needed to be a specialist. But in some of the research that I'm doing around, talent and people and their careers, I'm discovering that going back to being a generalist, or what would have been called back in my day a jack of all trades, you actually are better positioned, I think, to tackle a variety of challenges that may come your way. So I've always been able to transition my leadership skills into coaching, because I'm one of those people that think that coaching actually is perhaps what I'm doing more than leading people or managing them. I'd like to say that the team of managers that I work with here at CACI that report to me, that I'm spending more of my time coaching than I am managing them. They're competent professionals in their own right. So it's easy to make the transition from one area of expertise to another. I know just enough information to be dangerous.
The research that you mentioned about the specialist versus generalist, Betsy?
part of that research is because in March, I'm actually one of the presenters at the Southern Proposal Accent Conference in Atlanta. So I'm speaking on recession-proofing your career, similar to the presentation that I gave at the last bid and proposal conference. And so I've been doing a lot of research on reskilling and upskilling and what it's going to take to survive in more automated world, and how people are going to actually be able to be successful either with the skill set that they currently have or how they're going to have to retool that in order to remain competitive, not just as an individual talking about their own survival skills, but how companies can remain competitive by having the best talent that they can bring on board.
Amazing, Betsy. So now going back to the APMP, Betsy. 1996, Betsy, is that where your APMP journey started?
That's correct. I joined the National Capital Area chapter, and it was a fairly small group, as I recall at the time, but I had great leadership. I don't know if you ever met Lou Robinson from Winning Proposals. I would say he was probably my mentor coming up at the time, as well as more people in this day and age would probably be familiar with Carl Dixon from CapturePlanning.com. He was also a great influence. I followed him as president of the chapter.
It's amazing, Betsy. You became a member, then you kind of spearheaded all the way up to becoming a chair of APMP and CA chapter. Betsy, can you share some of the journey as well, Betsy?
I did. Well, there's a lot there. Date-wise, I want to say that at the time I was a documentation specialist and an instructional system designer for two different companies. That was the 96-97 time frame.
Sure.
And I decided to move into a different venue from where I was, knowing that some of what I had been experiencing was helping teams develop responses to proposals. So I got myself over into Datatrac Information Services, as we talked about earlier. That was around about 97. And I think probably, the individuals who were leading the National Capital Area chapter at the time recognized that I was what we would refer to as an up-and-comer. And so they suggested that I self-nominate for the secretary-treasurer position. So I did that from 2001 to 2002, and then I became NCA president in 2003. I did not serve a 2-year term. I actually negotiated with another member, Kate Rosengreen, to split the presidency because I was also doing a lot of volunteer work for Seroptimus International, Fairfax County, and at that same time was soon to become president of that organization as a nonprofit. So I didn't think I'd be able to obligate as much time to both over a 2-year period, so I split it. And then I guess once I became more recognizable in the industry. And at that time, David Witten was expanding the board of directors to include now regional directors. It was suggested that I apply for the Eastern Regional Director, which I did, and served in that capacity from 2006 to 2008. Between then and the time where I became secretary in 2009, I did a variety of things. One of my more favorite things was the books review editor. And of course, now that the journal no longer exists, they've gone to winning the business. That opportunity has fallen away. But one of the most interesting things that I did on the board of directors was prior to each, at that time, national conference, I would go out, the board would go to the site where the annual conference was going to be held. And I would either go out earlier or stay longer, and then I would write a travel log, which was published in the journal so that members would understand the other things that they could do in the area at the time. So for, this upcoming BPC, obviously I'm going to be leaning on Ashley a lot, knowing that she's recently moved to Nashville, to find out what kind of activities, we can partake in if we've never been there before. So, I had a lot of neat things that I did on my way up to becoming at the time what was the CEO. I went from secretary in 2009 to COO in 2010, and then became the CEO in 2011. At one point, I think it was the 2010 timeframe, I also was the conference chair. So I've tasted a little bit of everything that you can across the association. And I think the biggest change I saw in the industry, which I was proud to be a part of, was being able to serve as a certification mentor when APMP added the accreditation program. I think that was probably the biggest change that we'd seen in some time in the industry.
Wow, Betsy, I lost the count from 1996 all the way to 2011. That's a beautiful 15-year journey, Betsy. And still, we are here with you 25 years on. That's unbelievable, Betsy. So looking back, Betsy, how was APMP like in 1996 when you were as a member, your Bitcoin experience all the way to, say, last year, the Orlando, Florida? What has changed? What has stayed the same, Betsy?
Well, the biggest change, obviously, is the number of members that we have. And again, I attribute some of that to the certification program. I would say, the most significant change was I came on board as the CEO the year that we had the leadership change. So David Witten had expressed an interest in stepping away, and then it was the board's responsibility to find a replacement for him, which of course we did in Rick Harris. And Rick and I sort of learned together then in 2011. My first year as serving then as the CEO was Rick's first year serving as the executive director. So that probably was the biggest change. We sort of worked hand in hand throughout that entire year to make sure that we could maintain the positive momentum in the association, as well as look to plan to bring new life to the organization, as well as expand the program offering. So I was very grateful to be a part of that at the time, and I think that probably, at least I think Rick thinks so, is one of the biggest impacts was the changeover of leadership in the association.
100%, Betsy, because I haven't met David Witten before, but I've met Rick many times, and every time we speak to you, always look upon that time where I think you and Kirstine, I think, took him on board.
Right.
From then on, I think his journey has moved so far, and I think that's a very important moment, not only for you, Betsy, but for the industry as a whole. I think thank you for finding us, Rick. You mentioned that you really loved the book part of when it used to be on the previous proposal journals. Was that the thing that triggered you to write or co-author the glossary of terms, Betsy?
No, I think that was an outgrowth actually of the accreditation program. And of course, I co-authored that with Charlie Devine, who became the accreditation director. And of course, then we switched to having it become a certification program. It really was a need for individuals to have that complementary material for them to pass the exam. So it was just something that I volunteered to do. And because I was such an avid reader and I have such an extensive professional library, I didn't have to look far to be able to pull a lot of the resources to be able to put together the glossary of terms. And as you've seen now over the years, I'm not directly involved in that anymore. I don't believe Charlie is either now that he's retired. So, the change that we see is the addition of, language that appeals to more of an international base. So, as things morph over time as they need to, and we grow the business, you see that there are other changes. I was just happy to be asked to participate in that as a way of giving back to the community that had embraced me so.
Oh, that's beautifully said, Betsy. How long did it take for you to pull together glossary of terms, Betsy?
I think we actually were able to pull the documentation together in a couple of months. I don't recall that it took a long time pulling it together. It was more getting the approvals and the formatting and how were we going to display it, and did we have enough examples in there that it would make sense. It was more the approval process that took a long period of time. I want to say, although Kathy Day probably would correct me, I want to say we had it done within a year's time.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's good to know, Betsy. And during the same time, Betsy, you also took the certification yourself, Betsy. How was that experience of being part of the certification program, and then also was involved on doing the foundation, practitioner, and the professional?
Absolutely. Yeah, I passed the foundation exam in 2005. I was part of the pilot program. I want to say we were either in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Arizona. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look to see where the conference was in 2005. But that was interesting only in that I remember sitting for the exam. The rest of us, we were in a large room, sort of in a U-shaped room, taking the test. And I finished, and the people on either side of me were still going. And that sort of scared me, because when time was up, they hadn't gotten through the whole exam. Wow. And so that seemed to me a bit frightening. However, we soon came to learn that no, everybody passed, and that they had answered enough of the questions that they were certainly above whatever the minimum was at the time. So that's what I remember, though, being done, and there were still people feverishly working on their exams. I decided, because I was paying for it by myself, which I still endorse. That's one of the things I know you would ask me about what I pass on to other people when I mentor them, is that, if they want to be responsible for their own professional development, it will carry them a long ways rather than having to worry about taking the exam on somebody else's dime. And then if you happen to leave that company, them, saying or asking for you to pay them back. I didn't want any kind of block to my professional development. So, I scrapped and saved so that I could pay for each level of the exam. So every 2 years, I did foundation 2005, then I saved up enough money, and I thought I had enough experience worthy of filling out the PPAQ at the time, the questions. And then I sat for my professional in 2009. So I plotted it out, and it worked well for me.
Betsy, in addition to the APMP certification, you also did the Certified Knowledge Manager thing as well, Betsy. What does that cover, Betsy? I think I'm a bit curious. Maybe our listeners might want to know that as well.
Well, sure. That's. I'll give you just a little background on that. As CACI went through a lot of merger and acquisition activity, and the size of our team grew, there were maybe more qualified people than what they had envisioned. So I had been asked, as my boss was soon to retire, if I would move to a different position and actually manage the business development portal. So the first thing I did was ask them, yes, I'd be willing to step up to the challenge if you would send me out to become a certified knowledge manager. And, that's the same line I used when I was asked if I wanted to become the next proposal manager. I said, sure, if you send me to Shipley training, I'm all in. So the knowledge management piece, simplistically, it's really about connecting people with the proper information in order to advance a particular cause. So in this case, whether it's through communities of practice or networking around the company, my team provides that information in the form of a business development portal so that employees have improved access to the policies, procedures, and best practices that they need in order to respond to requests for proposals, white papers, whatever element of the business development life cycle is requested. So to me, that sounded like it was exciting because we know you're not supposed to pull off the awarded proposal that you got the first time now that you're the incumbent and just retool it, that you really need to make sure you have a good understanding of what your customers' needs are at the time. And as most proposal professionals, we all had our own individual toolkits. And this opportunity afforded me the chance to be able to come in and serve as a project manager, which I still do for the corporate-wide business development portal. So, trying to get what we call the tacit knowledge, the knowledge that's in everybody's head, out so that it can be codified so everybody else can use it, is still a challenge. As people come and go from the company, you try to get all the goodness that they have and be able to capture that in some way, shape, or form. And I think here at CACI, we have a good platform to do that. So, I'm still involved in business development. I'm still in proposal operations. It's just that I no longer am a proposal manager leading a singular effort. Part of what my responsibilities in addition to the portal are is I serve as one of the compliance leads. So I have my hands on a lot of the bids that go out the door here, as well as my team also is responsible for providing the business development training. So several of us are certified by Shipley to do that. And so, we teach writing federal proposals, we teach capturing federal business, and then we have our own homegrown recompete success course that we also teach. So, just having the CKM label on my name doesn't quite define me. It's just another one of those. I do a lot of things to help my colleagues try to win business.
100%, Betsy. The whole talk so far is about you always find that extra improvement in anything that you work on, and you always go forward and trying to find improvement yourself. And then once you did it, you then share that experience to others. That's what I'm hearing more, Betsy. It's classic. Thank you, Betsy.
All right, Betsy. So you've shared so much of your experience and so much of the knowledge that you pass on every day. We're going to kind of mix things up with a fun surprise rapid fire questions round. Are you ready for this?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Betsy, if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn.
Wow, yeah, that's great. If you had to work but didn't need the money, what would you choose to do?
I think I probably would go around to a lot of the homes in the area that I see have been neglected and probably try to offer them some landscaping services.
You have such a big heart, Betsy. If you were home on a rainy Sunday afternoon, what movie would you want to see on television?
That's interesting because I'm not a movie goer. If I could convert the book I Was Amelia Earhart into a movie, and I'm sure there are movies and clips of her, but that's probably what I would like to watch. If I could make that text come alive, that's how I would try to live her experiences.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned you're a big nonfiction reader. Do you have any other nonfiction favorites?
I don't really have favorites. I can tell you I just got the Game Changers for Government Contractors, so I'm getting ready to digest that. I'm always interested in, we like to refer to ourselves as having, these insider tips and advice from top experts. So I'm interested, one, to see who they considered to be thought leaders, and then find out by reading it what I don't already know.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I still haven't ordered my copy, but it's on my to-do list for sure.
Yeah, I just received it, so haven't dove into it yet. I don't really have any other recommendation for you in that regard.
Okay, so that's the one that's currently on your nightstand.
Yeah, that would be it.
Awesome. So is there an app that you hate but you use anyway?
That I hate. I can't think of one that I hate. Yeah, no, I guess the one that I found most troubling was Tune In. I try to tune in to different sporting events, and then I get upset when maybe they show me just snippets of it. But then, of course, in order to see the entire game, I'd have to pay for it. So that I always find troubling. So yeah, Tune In is on my bad list.
I think that would frustrate me as well. Do you have a part of the human face that's your favorite?
That would be people's eyes.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely. You know, they say they're the windows to the soul, right? You can tell a lot from looking at someone's eyes.
You can tell a lot, and in our industry, you know, it's all about trust. So to me, being able to look into somebody's eyes, or you know, when you're talking to them, or you know, they're trying to sell you something, usually there's a second tier story somewhere in there.
That's a great point. If you inherited a private jet from a stranger, what would you do with it?
I probably would load it with a group of school children who had never been one to the airport, and then take them probably to the Caribbean so that they could see how blue the water was.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, if you've never seen it, you can't describe it to someone. They have to experience it for themselves. And I say that about the plane because my husband and I sponsored, well, a young woman, she's now married, but a young woman in Prince William County, and she had never been to the airport before, and we paid for her to go on a school trip to Australia. And so I remember the look on her face when she got to Dulles, and at that time they hadn't locked down the security, so you could still go through and go out in the terminals. And I guess I just never forget the look on her face. So that's what I would do. I would try to get a group of young children that probably never had left their community and take them to the airport and head south.
What an amazing story, Betsy. That's incredible. What are the qualities that you really appreciate most in a friend?
Well, certainly, like I said, you know, trust is one right up there. Probably being non-judgmental, that you could actually call up someone at any point in time and ask for help, and they wouldn't respond by asking you more questions. They would simply respond by saying, what do you need? And where do you need me to be? That's probably, those probably would be my top two qualities. I try not to be too judgmental.
That's great. Those are great qualities for sure. All right, last one. You're in the circus. Would you rather be the person with their head inside the lion's mouth or get shot out of the cannon?
I'd rather be shot out of the cannon.
Was there a reason, Betsy? Why?
Well, I'm a cat person, so I'm not sure I would want to put my head inside a lion's mouth. And I'm someone who has vertigo, so it's difficult for me to climb to high places. If I was shot out of a cannon, I wouldn't have the ability to say no. It would just happen. So I'd be able to experience the glee and joy of that sort of suspension. I'd worry about, the downfall afterwards, but it's something that I would want to do because I wouldn't be able to do it on my own.
That's a very positive way of looking at things, Betsy. Amazing. Yes. Thank you.
That's probably another trait of the friend, right? Having a positive outlook on life.
Yes, 100%,
Yeah.
Betsy. Yes,
absolutely.
Right. The ability to take a potential negative and turn it into a positive.
Yes.
So I think that's it for the random rapid fire questions. I think Bhaskar has some great questions on gratitude, which has been a theme of a lot of his posts recently.
Okay.
Yes, Betsy. Betsy, you mentioned that you were part of a non-profit body, Betsy, while you also took the position of APMP. Are you still associating yourself with that non-profit, Betsy? And do you know, can you share why that association?
I'm no longer an active member of Seroptimus International. It's an organization that promotes women and girls around the world. I do still, when I purchase books off of Amazon, the credits, the issues go to Seroptimus International, so I've aligned with them. I do participate in a number of their fundraisers when I can, but I had gotten so busy at work that I wasn't able to devote the same amount of time that I had previously. And so I went inactive.
And looking back, Betsy, your life or your career, who have been the most influential in both the sectors, both the life and in your career, Betsy, that you are so grateful of? You can name as many people as you want.
Well, I'll just speak to a couple. One in life, I would have to say the person that had the greatest impression on me was my mother. My mother was a career individual. She was an executive secretary at Eastman Kodak for some 35 or 40 years. She was a single parent. And so she also, while she had that executive secretary job, served as a waitress in the executive lunchroom so that she could put my sister and I through college. She made a number of sacrifices so that we could advance our careers. I think she didn't want us necessarily to become secretaries like she did. At the time, there were maybe, I remember, my guidance counselor suggesting that there were maybe only 2 careers for women at the time. I'm showing you my age. And that would be being a secretary or a teacher. So, of course, you know what avenue I took. So I would say my mother was the greatest influence, and she also was didn't understand why I left my first career and sort of boldly went out into the unknown world to take on the next one. I think she would have been very proud of who I'd become and the kind of differences that I've continued to make. So that was probably the most influential individual in my upbringing. On the career level, again, I mentioned a couple people. Lou Robinson certainly believed in me. We still, correspond, and he always has encouraged me to do my best. And then I would say, more recently, it would be Eric Gregory. He, of course, was in charge at the time I came to CACI. He's the reason I came. I met him at an APMP conference. I walked into a session on pricing and sat down next to him, and he boldly asked me what was I doing there. And I said, well, I'm here because this is one of my weaker areas, so I'm here to learn more about what I should be doing. And he asked me, where I was at the time, and I told him that, I was, at that time I was working for UNITECH, and that we were in the process of being bought out by Lockheed, which it's possible the timing of our conference that I think that sale had already gone through. So I told him that I was had been dispatched to the Orlando facility and had worked for Lockheed down there for a month to see what it was like, so I could go back and let my team know whether or not I felt I could stay or go. And what I shared with Eric was that my husband said, if you plan on going to Florida, you're going by yourself. So, when you make these kind of career decisions, sometimes you have to make them with others in mind. So I chose to stay and basically indicated to Eric that, I was going to be looking for another job. And he very swiftly said, well, when we get back to the Washington, D.C. area, he said, give me a call, we'll get together for lunch. And of course, the rest is history. I did interview with CACI, and I've been here ever since. So he probably then made the most influence, because he too he served as the CEO twice for APMP. And at the time I was to become the CEO, actually when I saw him, would have been in the month of May, right, at a conference. So I was the COO, soon to become the CEO. And, he gave me the opportunity to be that person and start off on the right foot at CACI. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Wow, Betsy. And if the three people that you mentioned, your mom, Eric, and your other colleague, Betsy, in front of you, what would you like to tell them, Betsy?
Well, what I'd like to be able to tell them is that I'm I'm glad that you were there to support me when I needed it. I appreciate that you still stand by me when I make good decisions and when I make bad decisions. And that probably the most important thing that I learned from each of you was knowing when to say no.
Classic, Betsy. And what is the best piece of advice, Betsy, that you have received, and from whom?
Well, I think probably the best piece of advice that they gave me, and again, I can't pinpoint who it was, but that I should be responsible for my own professional development. Don't let somebody else steer you. You know, go with the gut, as we would say, and you know, you'll find your way.
Wow.
I never look back. I never believed I made the wrong decision leaving my first career, and I'm hoping here in my encore career that I'll be making the right decisions as well.
So Betsy, you over the years have been able to be a part of so many different aspects of the workforce. You've been a coach, you've been a PE teacher, you've been a proposal manager, and now you're kind of leading proposal operations from a knowledge management kind of perspective. So when you started out, is there one thing that you wish you had known before you began kind of your journey and your career?
Probably that fear was going to be my number one enemy. I never really looked back. I didn't think that as I was, you know, starting on my next career that I wasn't going to be able to achieve or accomplish great things. You know, I aligned myself with people who were more than willing to coach me and serve as mentors. And so I embraced that. What I wish I had known was that I probably should have expanded that circle to include more people. But, you know, you never know what you don't know, right? So I don't really look at that as a negative. But I think, you know, the fact that I didn't need to be fearful of the decisions that I was making, probably. I wish I'd known that, because, of course, then I wouldn't be second guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great message for, you know, anybody who's listening, and especially kind of younger individuals in, you know, the workforce. You know, we don't have to be afraid, and we should own our decisions. And ultimately, if you have the right people supporting you, you can achieve those things and not have to have that anxiety about it.
Well said.
Well, thank you. Betsy, you've mentored so many individuals over the years, but if someone came to you and asked you to mentor them, what's the first thing that you would teach them?
I think the first thing that I would teach them is that listening is a critical skill. Probably we spend a lot of time as we're learning, trying to convince ourselves of something. So we spend a lot of time talking, when actually, if we're trying to engage others, we should spend more time listening. And as you advance throughout your career, no matter what your role is, there's always something to learn from others. So if you're trying to help them or guide them if you're in a leadership role, then generally you need to spend more time listening to what their needs are as opposed to directing them to do something.
Yeah, it's such a great message. Over the years, I know you've had a huge focus on kind of the softer skills, and a lot of that comes from your coaching perspective, I could imagine. Are there any other soft skills that you think are critical for proposal professionals in general?
Well, interestingly enough, the research shows that the most critical skill these days is creativity. And I say that because I just finished putting that together for the SPAC presentation. I don't think proposal managers necessarily think that they're a creative bunch, but many times when we experience conflict, whether it be with an individual or schedule or other commitments that we've made, we don't really spend time thinking through what some of the alternatives could be. And so if you have the ability to be a bit more creative in your thinking, I believe you can come up with satisfactory alternatives to what might be considered counterproductive in the first place.
Absolutely. That's a great point and something I hadn't really thought about. So you're doing this research, you're presenting, and you've taken kind of a new role in the knowledge management type arena. What's next for you?
Well, I'm on what I call the 2-year plan. So I've been thinking about succession planning for some time. So I'm trying to figure out what my encore career is going to be. I don't think that I probably will go cold turkey and step away from this profession like I did my first career. But, most folks in the proposal world go off and become consultants, much like you did. I'm not sure that's my cup of tea, or if I'm interested in really starting off and being more of an entrepreneur, like I acknowledge Carl Dixon to be. There's a little bit of that, I'll say, wild hair in my thought process. But again, I'm still 2 years away. So part of what I've done is try to expand my learning. And so this is the second year that I've joined the Institute for Excellence in Sales. And there's a lot of complementary programs that they offer. They're also local here in the Northern Virginia area, so I'm able to attend their sessions and listen to their podcasts and such as a member. So I'm trying to expose myself to a lot of other avocations that I normally wouldn't thought that a school teacher from rural New York State would be interested in.
Wow, Betsy, I can tell no matter what you choose for your encore career, based on your track record so far, it's going to be amazing and you're going to continue to influence people and just be a rock star. So I'm super excited to follow you and see where things go for you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it coming from you guys. That's great.
Betsy, is there any particular part of your life or career that we didn't touch, Betsy, that you would like to share?
Boy, I don't think so. I think I pretty much touched on everything. I will close with this. The worst job I ever had was working as a customer service rep for a heating, ventilation, air conditioning company, HVAC. So I told you earlier that, I came out of education. I'd always been either in a school or on a college campus, so I didn't have a lot of business savvy. So I went out methodically, job by job, to pick up those skills. And one of them was landing a customer service job at this HVAC company. I found out that, at least for this particular owner, it was not the kind of business I wanted to be in. I like to think I'm a very ethical person, and I was required to lie to customers about why, yes, you're on the schedule, but we're not coming to your home today. It was a very difficult time for me. I knew I could handle the phone skills without much difficulty. The scheduling, rapid fire, all of that was exciting. But when it came to the time where the owner would trump one customer with the next, and he usually did it with what you and I would consider to be high-powered political or famous people in the Washington metropolitan area that we all would recognize. I just knew it was not my cup of tea. And fortunately, he recognized that as well. And so we had a mutual agreement that I would simply part ways so that I could collect unemployment insurance, that sort of thing. That was a difficult time, but, I learned a lot of things about human nature through that, even though I believed he was a horrible person for what he was asking me to do. He understood that I needed to uphold my integrity. And so for that, I was grateful.
That's beautiful, Betsy. And as you rightly said, you can always learn how to be and how not to be from a person. And looks like you learned how not to be from that person, and that kind of elevated you to the person who you are at the moment. Betsy, that's it. So thank you so much, Betsy, for your time. It's been a real privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health, Betsy, happiness, continue to mentor people and inspire us as long as you are, Betsy. And we are so looking forward to see you very soon, Betsy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Actually, I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience with you and your listeners.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundaram,
signing off.